founder Jack from Linked, and then we also have Dakota from Crew AI. Then after that, as always, we'll have our open hack and networking time. But before that, Reed and I are going to go over some current events and then do a quick little AI trivia where there's a prize. You want to talk about that, Reed?
Yeah, we're going lava cake for the prize this time. We have a Domino's lava cake. What did we do last time?
I think it was like a brownie.
Brownie. So, as you can see, the budget's growing. No, that was last month. We're going lava cake.
Next month will be AI credits as well as a dessert.
I'll take you up on that.
He has great pizza. But before we hop into things, just want to give a quick shout out to.
Avra's not here today, actually.
Okay, my bad.
We love them anyway, so but we can skip that.
They are awesome.
Awesome. Let's hop into current events. Starting out with IPO season. SpaceX listed Friday. I think it got like a 25% pop. As a reminder, this is now SpaceX as well as XAI merger. They're kind of doing the whole AI compute play. Kind of some diagrams of their AI satellites came out. Essentially, the thesis is there's a compute shortage. Space has 5x the solar energy if you get 24/7 access to the sun, and then also free cooling. So kind of two of the big problems in compute potentially are solved. Obviously, there's a lot of engineering hurdles to get over, but that thesis kind of got it to this $2 trillion market value IPO. And then OpenAI and Anthropic both filed their S1s. So two more big names will be public soon.
Yeah. And one thing to add there is just OpenAI is coming in just below Anthropic due to two main reasons. Claude Code's just a lot more popular still than Codex and ChatGPT, as well as also OpenAI's burn has been increasing at a pretty large rate compared to Anthropic's. So people can just do speculating about what that is. Generally, the common consensus I've seen online is just that Anthropic models tend to be a little bit more efficient with their compute compared to OpenAI. But we'll monitor that, and both seem to be on track for their IPOs in like the fall. So September, November, we'll know. Then compute is the new real estate. So one fascinating thing is SpaceX, and more particularly XAI at the time, built a giant data center in around the Memphis area called Colossus. Colossus had a crap ton of compute. Originally, it was meant to be able to support Grok and all of its usage. Unfortunately, XAI and Grok is not like the best model. I don't see like too many people who put that on their name tags out here, but what? Yeah, so I guess it wasn't. Next time.
Not a Grok fan? Okay.
But yeah, so as we heard over there, not a Grok fan. Basically, no one was really using Grok, so they had all this extra compute laying around, and they were like, well, let's just sell it to our competitors. And it ended up being a great business deal with them because now they're making about $2.1 billion a month off of the Colossus data centers, when all in all, it cost them about like $6 billion to like do that initial investment, and then their cost for running the data centers per month is only a couple $100 million. So each month they're making about like $1.8 billion off of this, so it should be paid back in about 6 months.
I do want to throw one caveat here. I don't think they're giving up on training their own model. They also have a deal with Cursor, the AI code editor, and all of Cursor's data, and they're still pursuing their own model. I think the comparison is kind of like Amazon and AWS. So if you think of Amazon, they got all that compute because certain parts of the year, think Prime Day or Christmas, they needed it. They needed all that compute because there's all this traffic. But then the rest of the year, they could rent out their compute via AWS to other companies. So it's kind of, in my opinion, a similar dynamic going on where Elon's going to need the compute maybe in certain periods of time, they're training a frontier model. And then in kind of down times, they're spinning up this Elon Web Services or EWS where they can kind of rent out compute to other AI labs.
Then recently, and RIP to a fallen soldier, but we had Claude Fable and Mythos for about like 48 hours. Not sure if you guys got the opportunity to use them that much, but Mythos we've been talking about for a couple of months here. It was launched internally through Project Glasswing at a couple of Anthropic very close partners through a partner program. But then they released a more generally accessible model, Fable 5, which everyone who just had a Claude plan was able to use. It was a lot of fun, very, very good. We'll talk about kind of what happened with that in the next slide. But two other models we just wanted to talk about were Gemini 3.5 Flash and Gemini Omni. What's pretty cool about Gemini Omni is it's actually a multi-modality model. So that means it can take a lot of different types of input in the same kind of context and then be able to decipher all of them. So what that looks like in actual practice is you can combine speech or like some audio with video as well as text input and have it kind of all go into essentially the same context window and then actually be able to do operations from there. So that's really important when certain models aren't as good at like video or audio processing or something like that. Omni seems to be first in class at being able to synthesize all of them together and being able to do things where you just need to interact with a lot of different parts of the real world. But as I alluded to, the government ended up with also Anthropic, pulled Fable 5 and Mythos 5 offline. So Friday at 5:21, after the launch of Fable 5 and Mythos 5, Anthropic put out a statement that they needed to withdraw both of those models from general public consumption. Essentially, there was a meeting where they found out that there was some sort of jailbreak in the Fable model, and people were able to access the Mythos model underneath the Fable one, which is supposed to have guardrails. So that was brought to the government's attention, and then from there they ended up reaching out to Anthropic and were basically like, only let US citizens use this or no one, and they couldn't come up with a good feasible way of like only getting US citizens using it at this point in time, so they ended up pulling both models.
Quick show of hands, who thinks Fable will be back this week? Couple people. Next week? Okay, hand up if you think it'll never come back. One. Okay, cool. Interesting.
Then just one interesting thing, I've been like an Apple fanboy my whole life, and like felt like they've been great about like innovation, but was not really impressed with Apple Intelligence. I would like get some text from friends, and then it would like summarize it with something seemingly like inconsequential or like incongruent to whatever the texts were about. So Apple ended up not seeing a lot of great dividends with their initial Apple Intelligence deal, which was built in partnership with OpenAI. And they ended up actually like giving up on that partnership and putting OpenAI to the side. And then now this fall with their new operating system, they're going to have some Google foundational models inside of it, which is pretty important considering what I talked about with that Omni model that they have. So Siri might be able to deal with you just interacting with it from a like video and like just moving your body context, which could be pretty interesting this fall. But we'll follow along and give some updates as we learn more there. This was just a little like funny AI vulnerability story. Over 20,000 Instagram accounts, including the Chicago Bulls, some, I think it was the Obama era White House handle, and the US Space Force Chief Master Sergeant account were hacked. Essentially, all people did was they went on Instagram and went to the help section and were like, hey, I changed my email to this. Can you change the two-factor authentication email? And I guess no one really thought about like making sure the bot shouldn't be able to do that. So then a lot of people ended up getting access to a lot of very important accounts, and Meta has been actively fighting this. They like claimed it was fixed about like 48 hours after that was like launched, but then more accounts were getting hacked over this weekend and including today. So just I recommend logging into your Instagram, making sure you still own it, and no one's posting crazy stuff on it. Then just some more stuff kind of in relation to the infrastructure that's going to be able to support all these things is some data center politics coming home. There's a lot of general backlash across the United States for data centers, but one of the hubs ends up being right where we're living right now, Texas. Texas has the most demand for data centers as well as the most demand for the power to support them in the next 5 years out of every United state, and also just internationally overall. One thing that's pretty interesting is like right now the demand queue is 440 gigawatts, which is 5 times the like maximum amount of power the state's ever supported. So that's where you're seeing a lot of new power companies like Base Power coming about and providing a lot more stuff to be able to supply these data centers. Anything out there?
No notes. Terafab. I can speak a little bit to Terafab. So I think essentially Elon is fed up with the pace TSMC is building chips, and is just saying, screw it, let's do it ourselves. And the really exciting part is that it's going to be mostly in Texas. There was the big announcement at that Austin Power facility that we're doing this, and I think kind of the first prototype version of the Terafab is going to be up in North Austin by the Gigafactory. And then kind of the official plant is going to be west of Austin, kind of over near College Station by Texas A&M. So going to be major projects, bringing in lots of jobs. And like Bryce has been saying, there's going to be more political backlash. I think it's going to become a pretty mainstream topic and probably like a front-running issue on a lot of these upcoming elections.
And then, yeah, pretty similar thing going on where there's just a lot of demand for power down here, and Texas seems to be a pretty data center friendly state. So Samsung's considering a move down here as well. And then, yeah, just the last note is just we tend to be the robotaxi home, and Tesla recently expanded to cover the entire Austin metro area. So now they have like the largest radius out of any autonomous cars going in the United States. Waymo said they have some plans to do that in a little bit, but they're just lagging behind Tesla a little bit there, despite the fact that their fleet is a lot larger than Tesla's at this point. And before we get to tonight's speakers, we're going to do a quick little trivia thing with the group. So if you guys want to scan this QR code.
Remember, what is at stake with the lava cakes? Awesome. 10 more seconds. Cool. Let's do it. Question 1. What is the main purpose of using \loop in Claude code? Answer, to have the agent repeatedly improve or continue a task until the goal is met. Wow, sharp group. 30 of 31. The group is elite. Let's go, Sid. Sid was quick trigger. In Claude code, what is a hook best used for? Wow. Automatically running a command at a specific point in the agent's workflow. 93%.
You guys are killing it.
Sid. Anthropic filed its S1 at a 965 billion valuation. Roughly how recently had it been valued at 350 billion? A little tougher. Just 5 weeks earlier, 32%. Let's see if Sid is still up there. Sean. On the formerly public Fable 5, what happened to a sensitive cyber/bio query?
It would
Oh, go ahead.
it would auto route to Opus 4.8. So that was the initial safety and guardrails that they had built into Fable 5 that Mythos didn't actually have. But people figured out how to actually jailbreak through this. And when they showed proof of that to the government, they were like, okay, yeah, this is a big deal. We need to pull this. Lassiter.
Last one.
Yep, this is the last one.
Last question. ERCOT's interconnection queue hit 439 gigawatts. How does that compare to the Texas grid's all-time peak demand? About 5x the all-time peak, 60%. And our winner is Lassiter. Woo! Let's go, Lassiter. Come gather your prize.
Congrats, though.
Lassiter. Gutsy.
Awesome. So now we are going to get into tonight's speaker. Our first speaker is going to be Jack Moffett, the CTO and co-founder with Reed at Linked. And he's going to be talking a little bit about how to build applications with AI for users to actually solve their problems instead of just vibe coding something for fun. So give him a warm welcome, please.
Awesome. So hi, everyone. I'm Jack Moffett, and I'm Reed's co-founder at Linked. And so we've been in business for about 3 years now. And I think one of the things that I've been noticing more and more just on X or kind of in other conversations amongst engineers is this idea of engineering being dead with how easy it can be to generate code these days. But looking back over our kind of 3 years in business, I've been reflecting on how little of our day-to-day is actually writing code when you think of the actions and the tasks that we have that actually drive value in terms of the projects that we're doing on a day-to-day basis. Excuse me. So while I don't think engineering is dead, AI definitely has shifted what it means to be an engineer. And I think it shifted both how we build and also what we build. So how we build, agents can write faster than us. That doesn't mean that they're always 100% accurate, but when used correctly, they can help you output, quality work in a much, much shorter time frame. And I think if you're not kind of making sense of that and trying to figure out how you can harness that new capability, then that is a way in which I think you could be falling behind. But also, I think in terms of what we build, AI is certainly changing the landscape there as well. 5 years ago, if you were going to go build a product that had some sort of AI feature in it, with a traditional ML model, that would be kind of a clearly different project than just a standard, SaaS product that you're building. There was a big difference between AI and traditional software development, where now I think that line is getting blurred a lot. Even, a standard e-commerce site probably has some sort of chatbot widget interface in it or some sort of AI recommendation engine. So on top of just how we build, what we build is changing a lot, and that will be important later on as well. So I think what's important here, though, is that the job of engineering hasn't changed all that much. AI has just kind of surfaced a lot of the deeper layers that were always part of the job. So we used to think of software engineering as writing code, but we always still had to kind of think about all these deeper layers underneath it, right? What are you going to build? How do you communicate that with your stakeholders? How do you prove that it's actually driving value? And how do you understand kind of what metrics and data can be used to validate that? All of those problems are still there. They're just now more at the forefront, right? Where a software project used to be a 6 to 8 week sprint to try and roll out a bunch of features and get an MVP built. That time frame has been compressed to maybe 6 to 8 days, but you still need to build something useful, right? Just because it's cheap to build doesn't mean software in and of itself is valuable. You still need to be solving a business problem. And so that's where I think there are 3 clear kind of pillars or buckets of being an engineer that AI hasn't touched at all. The first one of those being the kind of mapping a business problem to some sort of technical solution. Anyone can go into Claude Code and, or Cursor or V0 and build a demo app. It doesn't mean that they know anything that's going on underneath the hood. It doesn't mean that what they built could scale and actually run in a production environment. That's still the job of an engineer, to understand the problem and understand how technology can solve it. The second piece is being that translation layer, right? So if you understand the problem, you understand the solution, you need to be able to communicate that effectively to the non-technical stakeholders on your team, and most importantly, the people who are going to be writing the check to fund the project. And lastly, you also need to be able to prove that. You need to understand what are the KPIs or metrics that the people with the check are going to want to look for to be happy and think that the job is done, not that just that they have a piece of software that doesn't actually provide them any value at the end of the day. And so I think to kind of dive into each one of these pillars, one by one, I think it would be useful to kind of use one of our clients as a general example. So at Linked, we do a lot of forward deployed engineering, particularly in the go-to-market space. So I'm going to kind of use one client in particular that we've spent a long time working with and kind of use them as an example as we go through this whole development lifecycle to show how the coding piece is really just the icing on the cake, but the actual problem and the value is driven through all of the other layers that is still kind of the core skill set needed by engineers. So when we started working with this client, really they came to us with the idea of they wanted to drive more leads. They were already paying for a bunch of data sources that was basically inundating them with a bunch of information that they couldn't actually act on. And they knew on top of that, given the sector that they sold into, that there was a lot of information out there on the web that they could be surfacing and trying to pinpoint good buying opportunities, but they didn't have the money to be paying BDRs to just constantly sit on Google and look for every single possible opportunity with one of their potential customers. So that was kind of their core problem statement. Now, to build a solution for them, there's a whole bunch of layers to that. You need some sort of AI, but you also need a bunch of web scraping. You also need to connect up to their CRM to be able to dispatch the leads to the right people. Some way to track when leads actually close so you understand what's valuable, what's not valuable. And before we wrote a single line of code, we wanted to break down essentially the system that they wanted, but understand at the core of it really what the problem was. And in order to build them the right solution, we had to know what lead was valuable to them and what lead wasn't. And I think one of the things that comes up, with this client in particular, but with a lot of our clients in general, is they might have some top-down directive right now where they're told that they need to go out and start some AI initiative and integrate AI into their company. And they don't know what that means, but they'll go to an AI company and say, build me an AI sales tool. And they might think that that means writing email, copy, or prospecting through, a voice agent that can answer customer cold calls. But in reality, what they actually need AI for, or what I think they usually need AI for, is one very small piece of their pipeline that they're already doing today, but they can help do it at a larger scale. And we come into this situation a lot where customers think that they need AI for some portion of a solution that they're looking for, when really the problem that they're actually trying to solve is something a lot simpler. It could be solved with, something like a database or a search index. I think a pretty good example of that is we've worked with a cigar or a guy who owns a brick and mortar cigar store, and he wanted an AI recommendation engine for cigars that he could put on a tablet in his store. He was able to give us a list with a CSV of over 2,000 cigars that were already classified as, the type of wrapper that they had, the country of origin that the wrapper was from and the filler was from. And it turns out that we could build him a whole recommendation engine that he was happy with without using a single piece of AI, just by loading everything up into MongoDB and being able to set up some intuitive aggregation pipelines where a user can select a cigar that they like, and based on matching features, it gives them a list of 5 other cigars that are pretty similar that they should try. He's happy with the system. It's super cheap. It runs every day in all of his stores on these tiny little tablets. And he can advertise it as an AI tool, but there's not a single piece of generative AI used in the whole system. So I think that's a good example of sometimes people might come to you thinking that they want an AI solution, buying into a lot of the AI hype. But a lot of times the actual right solution for them might be something a lot simpler. And I think that's a big part, or a big kind of transition into the second pillar of what's always been important for an engineer, but is being kind of emphasized today, which is being that translation layer. And that means both for kind of being the translation layer between non-technical and technical, but it also means being the translation layer between what the system is going to need, and being able to communicate that to the stakeholder in terms that they can understand. So to revisit the sales intelligence client, what we were able to pinpoint with them is what they really wanted from us is the ability to have a system that can go out, search through a bunch of leads, find a bunch of potential opportunities, but then filter down, the 10% of them that are actually actionable and valuable. So in order to do that, we need to be able to classify what's a good lead for them. Now, when we were in this kind of process of talking with them, what we found pretty quickly was they had a lot of account managers that have been working at the company for over 20 years. And a lot of that knowledge of what makes a good lead, what's a good kind of problem solution fit with their actual product, was kind of locked in the heads of these senior account managers. It wasn't documented anywhere. It wasn't stored in a database. We couldn't just hook into it and export some CSV and use it as a bunch of training data or an evaluation set. They were the only people who could define this were the account managers themselves. And if we just went to them and said, okay, to build out this system, you guys are gonna have to sit down and read through all of these opportunities and label them as good or bad. That request would have been dead on arrival, and we probably never would have made it out of the pilot. So what we had to do instead was come up with a way to creatively try and deliver them value up front as a way to incentivize them to engage with the product that we were building without making it feel like a chore for them, and also ideally, hopefully still providing them value early on. So we already had at Linked our kind of signal monitoring agents. So what we did was just set up a task for those agents, generalized to their kind of industry and use case. We were able to plug into a couple of their other data sources as well that they were already paying for, and then just took a first pass at it, right? Just using common sense, we can kind of see what's generally a good lead, what's generally not a good lead, but we erred on the side of over-inclusivity. So what that was just a weekly email blast to their chief of staff and a couple of the key stakeholders on the sales team that had basically 100 leads every week. With the idea being, yes, this is a big blast, but if you can just commit to me for 2 to 3 weeks, taking 5 to 10 minutes, go through this, and just send me a note back with some thoughts. Hey, I saw a bunch of leads in here that it was just news that a school named a new superintendent. That's not very useful for us. Or, hey, there's news in here that the school just had an issue with the data breach. That's interesting. That's something that we can act on. And just from that feedback alone, we were able to tune the system down in a couple of weeks from 100 leads a week to just a slim set of 20 to 40. And in that process, by them going through and just spending 5 to 10 minutes reading through those leads every week, they were seeing stuff in that list that was actionable. So there was noise, but they could also see pure opportunities in there as well. So I guess this kind of model has worked for us in other cases, in kind of other industries also. So with the sales use case, it's pretty obvious to see how, hey, they want good leads. Let's just give them a big batch, see if they can tell us what's good, what's bad, and hopefully there's some good stuff in there that they could even act on today. We've done similar use cases with legal teams where they've wanted an entire contract lifecycle management platform built out, which is, even with AI, several months long of building and trying to work with them to figure out the UX. So in order to get to the value as fast as possible, we would just build them a contract extraction system where we were able to figure out one of the core problems they had is, they have all these contracts and they just want to see what the key dates are. They want to know when they have to make payments, when there are deadlines for, filing extensions or stuff like that. So by building a very simple version of the app that basically parses a contract and gives them a timeline of all the key dates, they're able to have something that they can use today, validate that it understands the contract, and hopefully use it as a kind of tool in their workflow that's providing them value that they're not getting anywhere else today. And another example of that, we have another client who is a kind of recruiter, headhunter in a very specific niche. So he knows one of his sales flows that already works for him is if he sees a job opportunity on one of these kind of blue chip industry job boards for his vertical, and he knows that he has a candidate that he's working with that's a good fit for that job, he'll email or call the hiring manager and say, hey, I have a good fit. If you'd like to meet with them, here's their contact info. And then he just takes a cut. If they hire them, he takes a cut of the first year salary. So instead of trying to build out this whole pipeline that does the outbound, the contact, and tries to do follow-up and schedule a meeting, all we did was scrape some job boards and deliver him a list every week of here's 75 new jobs in the industry sorted by their kind of base salary pay. And he was able to follow up on those manually, doing what he already did. We were just giving him more opportunities up front. Once he validated that we were giving him good leads, then we went to the next step of hooking up the automated outbound and so on all the way through the chain. Okay, and so the goal with any of these systems where you're trying to do that lowest lift, kind of get that lowest lift build done first that gives them value is you're kind of wanting to create this flywheel as early as possible where they're using it, they're giving you feedback, but at the same time, they're getting value, and it aligns both parties' incentives. Because what you need to build a good product for them is their input, their kind of feedback, their decisions, their tribal knowledge, so that you can build a system that's actually delivering value for their business. And what they want, obviously, by hiring a software engineer or building any piece of software, is something that makes their lives more efficient. And when we kind of, particularly with the sales intel client, the signal that we got that we knew that we were on the right track is we got onto our weekly stand-up with them one week, a couple weeks into the project. And we didn't even know that they were following up on the leads at the time, but they said, hey, we booked 2 calls from the leads that you guys shared with us last week. It wasn't hooked up to their CRM. It wasn't getting routed to any of the account managers yet. It was just the chief of staff doing her kind of general weekly review. She saw a couple of things that were actionable and passed them along to the respective account managers, and they were able to book calls. So we were, before really anything had been built, already driving value for them. And we're able to get to that value point by flipping the whole life cycle. So instead of trying to go through this whole process, the more traditional engineering process of mapping the problems, which is important, but then defining user stories and prototyping in Figma, building an MVP, getting their feedback, then refining the UX, deploying it out to them. All of that work is just overhead to get to the point that you actually need to hit in order to know if it was worth the investment, which was, does this actually drive some metric or KPI that changes either makes me more money, saves me time, whatever it is. And just with AI now, going to take that kind of proprietary, or I guess tribal knowledge and proprietary data up front that they have, and trying to build some prototype that gives them value as quickly as possible so you can get feedback as quickly as possible and tune the system. That lets you basically flip that light in their head that they can see, oh, okay, this is why this is worth engaging in. This is why it's worth continuing to work with these guys. Or this is why this project is worth pursuing in the long term. Because all the rest of that on top has gotten a lot easier. Productionizing it obviously is still work that has to be done, but they're going to be much more eager to give you feedback and to give you that kind of input once they've already seen the value is there, and they will be a much more willing party to get you through the rest of that process once they're already excited about it and see the value, and it's not just something that's been handed to them as a directive. And so that's the kind of like the approach we've taken at every layer. So with this particular sales intel client, once we got those calls booked, we set up the connection with their CRM so we could route leads to their account managers. Then their account managers started acting on leads. Once we confirmed that the account managers were moving stuff through the pipeline and were booking calls and kind of treating it as a part of their daily workflow, then we set up a webhook to start receiving responses back from their CRM so that we could know which leads moved to close won, which ones moved to close lost, which one moved to kind of recycled or circle back, so that we can tune the system and keep refining the filtering and the priority that it's giving to each of the signals that we're sending through. And now we've moved into actually working directly with their engineering team and giving them API access so that they can start hooking it up into other internal workflows and other internal apps that they're building. Like one of the things that they're trying to build is this kind of call prep tool. And so they wanted to start pulling all the intelligence that we've just been scraping and collecting on a monthly or weekly basis for months now, and be able to summarize all that and give it to the sales reps in like a little dashboard view right before they get onto a call. And then they're also looking to tie that in with all of their other data. So as we've gone through each one of these validation points, it's just driven the client to say, okay, what can we do next? What can we do next? What can we do next? To the point we're at a stage now working with their internal engineering team that was never in scope when we first started talking with them. Whereas if we had just tried to go up front and, pitch them some big workflow, and after 3 months finally got to the point where it worked functionally, but they hadn't given us a lick of feedback, they might be less interested in, continuing to engage with us and trying to see how can we make this work? How can we make sure that it's optimized for our use case? If they had already just kind of sat there and not seen anything come out of the system for 3 months. And we've been burned by the opposite in the past. It's actually pretty early on. There's one client in particular that I think back on a lot, that we basically did the exact opposite, where we had a big scope with them up front, and despite wanting to maybe keep it a little bit more buttoned up and narrow and try and build them an MVP that they could bring to market and put in some of their customers' hands as early as possible, they were convinced that they needed a fully built, polished system to be able to market it and sell it to clients. So we spent the time building out every integration and feature with all these external services. By the end of it, it was a really polished app. It was cool. The UX was awesome. But he couldn't sell it to anyone because it didn't actually solve anyone's problem. Now, we do still work with that client today because we were able to be scrappy and pivot and basically build some side project that he was able to sell to someone, and he's starting to find traction there. But that work now, when we're working with this one client that he's been able to find, has actually been made more difficult because we have this kind of bloat and tech debt from the original project that we built out, where we're using a system that's maybe 10% the size of the overall code base. So still to this day, I think not holding the line a little bit more and trying to be firm on this isn't something worth building today is still kind of biting us a little bit with this one instance. And none of this is easy. It's in fact, I think it's always probably been the hard part of engineering. Good engineers were always kind of good at writing code, but great engineers were good at all of this other stuff, being able to talk to people, being able to understand how it actually solved a problem, knowing what's worth spending time on, what's not worth spending time on. None of that has changed. It's just been amplified. If you're good at writing code, AI's, maybe not better than you today, but when it comes to syntax and all the kind of nuts and bolts that go into building a clean code base, if you don't think it's better than you today, I promise you it's going to be better at that verifiable stuff 6 months, a year from now. That is just the converging trend that has not stopped at all. What has not shown any sign of AI being better at humans than yet is all the emotional side, the emotional intelligence side, being able to communicate with people, being able to understand who you're talking to and how to best communicate with them. So that's why I don't think engineering is dead at all. I just think it's changed, but it's become much more important and much more valuable than it has been in the past. And at the end of the day, it really kind of falls down into these three, in my mind, these three categories, right? Being able to understand the problem, map the business problem to the technical solution, translate, being able to be that conduit or the translation layer between the stakeholders and what you're going to build and why you're going to build it and what's needed to build it. And then lastly, understanding what outcome has to come out of that system. So at the end of the day, when you deliver it to the client, they're not going to say, what did you build me, or how do I use this? It's blatantly obvious to them why it's there and what they can use it for and why they need to use it on a daily basis. And yeah, that's everything I have.
Awesome job, Jack. I think we have time for 2 quick questions. Any questions in the crowd?
Oh, no, not at all. We met with it. We had weekly stand-ups with that client. It wasn't about like breaking it up into sprints. It was, okay, we have something where we're setting date A as the date that this is going to be done and delivered. We get to that point and he's like, okay, well, actually, I think we need another feature and another feature and another feature. So we just couldn't get him to basically say, okay, yes, I'm ready to go start selling it, if that makes sense. Where I think, one of the things that I think is a kind of skill that is worth developing is that it all falls into that communication piece, right? Communicating why it's not worth continuing to build all of this stuff that we don't know is actually going to be useful to a customer. And convincing is maybe not the right word, but help communicating why that, what we have today, while it's kind of bare bones, can still solve a problem. As long as we can, find the right customer with this problem. Yeah, no, I guess I agree with that point as well. Like, it is kind of it's amplifying how important iterative development is. I think what the kind of added layer on top of that is, in the past, the job of communicating with the client and the key stakeholders was often done by product managers. Engineering teams were a lot larger, whereas now that's the job of a single engineer. So I think when looking at, myself as an engineer, anyone sitting here as an engineer, your role today has changed a lot, where all of this has kind of, fallen onto you, where that's going to be kind of responsibility that you're expected to do. Maybe if not today, I think the trend has clearly been moving in that way for the last 12 months. And I don't see any kind of headwinds for that trend of communication and the social side of being able to communicate and solve problems, shifting away from the role of a software engineer.
Awesome. Thank you, Jack. I'd now like to intro our second speaker, a good friend of mine, Dakota St. Pierre. He runs a company called Crew AI, an AI studio and consulting company. And he's going to share a little bit about advertising in the age of LLMs. We all saw ChatGPT come out with running ads through a free tier, and we're going to see a growing trend of that, and that's going to be just a space to keep an eye on. Dakota has gone really deep in that and going to share what he's learned. So let's get a round of applause for Dakota.
Can you hear me? Okay, awesome. One more time for Jack, Hack AI. This is amazing. What a great event. Once again, thank you guys for coming out tonight. It's Monday, 6 p.m. I'm sure everyone in here has somewhere's better to be, but you're listening to us yap about some AI and development. Really grateful to be here. Really grateful to be talking to you guys. Something I'm pretty passionate about and been following along for the past couple years. So a little bit about me is I'm actually a developer, similar to Jack, and previously, before development and getting into really deep in the AI space and machine learning and things like that, I had dipped my toes into marketing and advertising for a while. I thought that was a very interesting space that will never die. I think we could kind of unanimously agree that at some point, we all think that some type of advertising will touch us throughout the rest of history. And when I got introduced into machine learning and LLMs and AI, I was like, wow, this is going to revolutionize how people market. So about 2.5, 3 years ago, I tried to really sit down and think like, what is the best way that people can use LLMs to make their product just well known? And I made this little Chrome extension that helped people realize why their website or their web page or their product wasn't being recommended inside of GPT or Claude or different things like that. And I think as of 2026, the tides have kind of shifted. A really big change has come, and I think it's crucially important to talk about what this change is and how it's affecting people moving forward, especially business, and what the behind the scenes of that looks like. So advertising inside of ChatGPT. In early 2026, January 2026, OpenAI had a brief moment of talking about running ads on their platform and what that was going to look like and what the future held for that. There was a really early beta where companies were able to run ads inside of their platform for an astronomical amount of money that most of us in here would take a double take at. But nonetheless, those companies got that access and were able to do that and run a lot of the testing. And as of about 2.5 weeks ago, they've opened it up to the public. And what we're going to go into a little bit today is what that looks like for the average user. Sorry, technical guy having technical difficulties as always. Besides the point. One of the really big things I want to kick off talking about is how LLMs are affected by sponsorships. There's a couple white papers out right now. Princeton has a really good one. I'm more than happy to share that with anyone after if anyone would like to read it. But it's essentially what happens inside of the LLM when you enter in third-party sponsorships, right? So we have to think about what the LLM is trying to process when a user queries it, but the LLM has a sponsor that it needs to promote and not just focus on what it believes the user's best interest is. As I'm sure a lot of us know, the way a lot of LLMs work is it's tokenized and it's looking for the response that you would like to hear. A lot of times it's not always the best at math equations and things like that because it can't tell what you're looking for or what you want to hear or things like that. And when you introduce sponsorships into these LLMs, it runs into a handful of problems. And some of these problems have been recognized, and some of them are solved, and some of them aren't. And we're still trying to figure out exactly which ones are existing and which ones aren't. But to that point, some of those problems are still existent. The thing is where people are looking didn't move. it didn't die. People are still looking for products. Just because the platform moved or where people are looking for products on doesn't mean they aren't searching any less aggressively. If anything, people are now much easily able to find products that they're looking for. So one little stat that a lot of people are mind blown by globally, it's the figure is kind of debated and argued right now, but it's estimated that there's over 1 billion people using AI chatbots globally, right? Think about that. 1 billion people using AI chatbots globally. There are very, 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 very few platforms that give you access to that many people. 1 billion people. Think about that. That's so many people. Then we can talk about daily users. There's hundreds of millions of daily users on these chatbots. People aren't going on a chatbot and saying, search or key terms and stuff like we used to do on Google when we're looking for Joe's Crab Shack and this and that. I'm looking for crabs tonight. What's the best crab spot near me? And I think in an age of advertising, understanding what this shift looks like is really, really important. A few key things. Running ads inside of LLMs is not how you would have traditionally done it, right? So traditionally, there's a lot of work that goes into what you're doing before you start running the ad. So you set up your SEO, you make sure your website's all set up and prepped and things like that. Now in the age, you can have a ad banner sit inside of ChatGPT. When somebody queries the chat, there is a pop-up for your ad banner that brings you directly to a checkout page, right? There's so few steps in the process now that people don't have to waste as much time filtering through, because these are all much more trusted sources to them. A lot of people have something called like AI psychosis because they are trusting these chatbots with every decision in their life. They're feeding every piece of information that happens to them on a daily basis. They trust it when they ask where to go eat. They trust it as if it was a therapist. There's such a high level of trust, and there's so much agency with these chatbots. You can sell out the wazoo if you're able to get on it. Another really big key takeaway from being early, right? And this is a point that I'm going to make a handful of times throughout this presentation, is how early we are with this. I'm sure a lot of people in here can recall back in, say, 2004 when Google started allowing ads and having business marketplaces to run ads. If any of you partook in that, you understood how confusing and how easy it was at the time to be super high ranked. Or when Meta in 2012, when they introduced their ads platforms, it was super, super confusing, but the people who acted first were the winners. The people who acted first were the winners because there was no competition. Right now, with GPT ads and other ads on chatbot platforms that are going to be introduced, there are so few people actively running ads on these platforms. The cost is practically non-existent. Along with that, because the costs are low, so few people are running ads on these platforms, you are almost guaranteed to rank. You are almost guaranteed to find your niche audience because there is no competition. You are the competition. You establish your presence early, and it will pay dividends, or that's my opinion at least. We can get into talking a little bit about like what the actual the sponsorship card looks like. It's not a recommendation in the chat. So what a lot of people thought that these advertisements inside of GPT were going to be, where you asked ChatGPT a question, it gave you a 6-paragraph response like it always does, and inside of that 6-paragraph response there would be a link or some sort of information on your product, or a take you to a homepage. It's slightly different. So what it actually is it's not a direct response from the chatbot, but it's a banner that pops up. And in this banner, there's going to be a logo. It's going to give you a little one-liner. It's going to give you a little bit of information in there. But the real estate on this sponsorship banner is incredibly, incredibly, incredibly limited. It's not like meta ads where you have an entire graphic and you have this information or you have this video that demonstrates this. It's incredibly thin, the margin for error you have with the information that you put inside of your little sponsorship banner on these GPT ads. You have to convey value in a very, very, very tight window. So you're really not using keywords anymore. I mean, that's a big one. Traditionally on Google, Facebook, or pretty much any advertising platform right now, keywords have been the lay of the land. That's what it's been traditionally for the past 2 decades. Keywords were kind of the end all be all. It's huge context hints are the big driving factor in this, right? So if my product has ads and my sponsorship information for my ad banner, I need to know what kind of questions these people will be asking, not just keywords or Joe's Crab Shack or this, or, you know, I need to know the context upon which these people will be able to find my sponsorship so that I can be displayed in front of as many people as possible, not just based on keywords, because keywords don't always work, especially with LLMs. So who are going to see these ads? Right now, the current setup is just free tier and Go users. I actually think it's changed over the past 48 hours from the Go users. I think it's back to just the free tier. At one point, it was the free tier up to the plus. It's changed a few times. Once again, this is brand new. There are going to be very, very, very aggressive changes happening in multiple iterations, right? I think the most important thing to note is that people will see the ad. Right now, what people are these that are seeing the ad? It's kind of still murky waters. Nonetheless, people are going to see the ads. I wholeheartedly believe that at some point, Plus and Pro users will also have ads shown to them, just at a different rate. It's just like almost every other platform we have right now. There's different rates upon which these platforms show you ad. You have to pay for the maximum subscription in order to get no ads, or you have to run ad blockers that you pay for, or all of these other things to try and avoid the ads. And unfortunately, that is coming to the LLMs. Yep, this is a little bit more about what that actual sponsorship banner looks like. So once again, you say in a prompt into the LLM. The LLM has the same discussion with you. It still gives you the information as before. And one thing that I have realized and recognized over the past is there's a lot of things that you could do to prep to make sure that not only is your sponsorship banner showed, but also you're recommended by the LLM. It's slightly different topic and similar to the SEO for the purpose of the LLM, but nonetheless, being shown when somebody is looking to purchase with a direct link to your purchasing is massive. It is huge. Yep, so describe the conversation, not just the search terms. This is back to the keywords. A lot of times I think this is a huge stressor that I really wanted to drive into this presentation is fundamentally the way you are setting up and structuring how you would run and set ads inside of an LLM is just fundamentally different than how you would manage or run or set up an ad campaign inside of Google or Meta, because you are not looking to compete for keywords. That is a huge thing right now, and it has been for the past 2 decades. Competing for key terms has single-handedly driven a majority of marketing campaigns for years now, and it's just simply not the case when it comes to LLMs. Understanding the situation, putting yourself in the user and how they interact with the chatbot, understand the conversations that they're having, the context being shared, the demographic you're searching for, and how they converse with these chatbots will massively affect how your ads are displayed. Yeah, it's super tight. It's going back to what I was saying before. You have very, very, very limited real estate on this ad banner. They are being super, super tight about this. They're not giving you a ton of space. They're not giving you a ton of things to work with. No videos yet, no paragraphs or or all of these different things, you have to make a lasting impression or be the best answer for the query that your audience is giving, and you have to be really killer with it. You have to know exactly who you're going after. These sponsored banners can be easily looked over, right? If you're inside of ChatGPT and you're talking about dinner for the night, most likely you're not going to be sitting down for the next 30, 45 minutes having a conversation about how to cook the crabs. So this person's not going to be seeing that ad banner on multiple occasions. You have to make a very, very lasting impression with a tight window. So what does the actual ads management look like? It's actually changed like 3 times now since being released. I project that it's going to change a whole lot more before it finds, the actual sticking point and what we're going to be running with for a long term. But right now you have daily budgets. Similar to most other platforms, there's a minimum budget, which if is correct, yesterday was at about $25. You also have max CPC bids. You have cost per action, which is a really cool thing they have on there. There's tons of really interesting pieces to this. And another thing to note is, if you see right here, it says United States and Canada. These ads are not available everywhere. So it's only available in a few countries right now. This is still essentially being piloted. And I think that's a really key thing to note here. You are finding out about the newest form of marketing in its earliest stages. Who's the winners? The early people. How do you manage this? Right? So let's say you build an ad campaign inside of GPT. You have your ad campaign, you've set it up, you've got your daily budget, you have your banner, you're really confident in what that banner is going to look like, you're really confident who it's going to be shown to. Now, how do you manage it long term? How do you adjust on the fly? Similar to all other ad platforms right now, you have access to pixels, you have access to live impression management, different things like that. Now, how you adjust is slightly different. I can go into that. It's kind of shaky on what they're actually set on. I was on the platform earlier today, and interestingly enough, there was a field on the platform that it showed what it was going to allow you to do, but it didn't let you interact with it yet. But once again, this is brand new. So they are still even trying to figure out exactly how they want to make sure people are using it, what information they're giving away, how you can use these numbers, these clicks, these impressions to actually turn them into conversions at the best price possible. Should you start advertising? It's the $1 million question. Who's going to be the first one to jump in the water? Is there sharks in the water? Is there Nemos in the water? Who knows? That's the $1 million question. I have a slightly aggressive take on this. I think people should go now. I think if you had the opportunity to run the best ads you've ever made in Facebook in 2012, you would have paid nothing for it and got the highest returns on any other platform. And people wish they had that opportunity a decade ago. The opportunity's now, right? And there'll be another one another decade from now. And the $1 million question will stand there. Should I do it, right? The thing is LLMs aren't going anywhere. The users on them are only growing. We're figuring out how to make really effective ways to show your information, your business, your content to people who are looking for it. Now, if I told you there's a brand new platform that people could search exactly what they're looking for and your content could pop up right to them, you'd say, where do I sign up? Here it is. GPT is offering ads. You can go and set yourself up an ads account today. You can get a live ads account today and start running your first ad campaign inside of GPT. Is this going to be a long-term thing? I personally think so. I've had some pretty in-depth conversations with some highly intelligent people who do not think that's the case. There are definitely tons of skeletons in the closet of OpenAI. There's tons of skeletons in the closet of all the AI companies right now. I think fundamentally AI, LLMs, and advertising are all things that are going to be here for a long time. So to say they do not converge or intersect, I think is a slightly radical take, in my opinion. And it's kind of up for interpretation right now. I personally think the winners are going to be the people who go start now. Is it cheap attention right now? It is. It is so cheap right now. I cannot stress that enough. So few people are running ads inside of GPT that you are never going to see the numbers that you will see right now ever again. Ever again. I personally spoke with a person who was getting like 3-cent cost per clicks. Name somewhere else you can get 3-cent cost per clicks. Your first campaign. It doesn't exist. It simply does not exist. My take is if you start running ads on OpenAI right now, you will be a very high-ranking individual on the platform. Start small. That's what I recommend to people. Give it a try. Just test it out. Make yourself a banner. Make sure it's well. Start small. Really put your best foot forward. $20, $25 is roughly the minimum right now. Spend it for a few days. See what happens. It might go great. You might get nothing from it. You will experience. You will learn. Needless to say, people, there's never too much advertising you can do. Is there ever any less people you would like to see your information? Is there any less people you would like to have introduced to your business? I personally don't think so. Yeah, I kind of wanted to open it up to discussion closer towards the end of this. I really want to hear some feedback on what people are doing right now for their advertising. What are their takes on advertising side of LLMs? And then I want to go into a personal take on how LLMs are how advertising are affecting LLMs and different things like that. I'll actually start there. There's a few papers. I briefly mentioned that Princeton paper. Sponsorships in advertising in LLMs is creating issues right now. So an LLM has big trouble trying to distinguish whose best interest to put first. Do they put the sponsorship's best interest first? Do they push the sponsorship to everyone? Do they put the user's best interest first and not show the sponsorship and make sure, it's a really interesting cycle. OpenAI is doing decently well with it. When they were running the pilot, they struggled big time. Princeton made a paper. They talked about specific models they've tested and ran benchmarking on to see how they would react to sponsorship. There was actually an Anthropic model, Haiku. Haiku 9.2 times out of 10 would completely abandon the user's interest in order to show and essentially plaster this advertisement around anyone querying the LLM remotely close to what the sponsorship was going after. Think about that, 9.2 times out of 10, this model was recklessly abandoning what the user's interests were to make sure this business got as much visibility as possible. Now, we can see this from one of two angles. As the business owner, I would be ecstatic about this, right? As the user, I would probably not want to get back on ChatGPT too often, right? So there has to be a happy balance here. Have we found that happy balance yet? I personally don't think so. Think that sounds pretty interesting coming from the guy giving a talk on GPT ads, but I don't think we have found that balance yet. I think that balance is close to being found. But just like anything else in this AI space right now, I think there's a lot of give and take. I think we have to allow them time to figure out what is going to work. We have to allow them time to run these tests. We have to participate. We have to see what works. We have to see what doesn't. Yeah, I think that's about what I have on some GPT ads. Does anyone have any questions? Yep. Yeah, it's really interesting. So one of the terms that I think I had in this slide, it's really context based, and we talk about context and context management and context this and context that in terms of AI all the time. But really, what is the context of the premise of your product, right? You sell running shoes. You're not trying to sell someone on the idea of purchasing shoes. You're trying to sell someone on the idea of fitness, right? Are they going to go run? If they are going to go run, what are the key things they need to have a successful run? You don't want them seeing banners for headbands, as useful as that is for the context of that discussion and situation. You want the shoes to be, the key thing. How do we shape the conversation and the context around running or fitness to be shoes? Because this person needs to have a healthy run. They need to have healthy feet, different things like that. So let's say somebody is, hey, I'm really getting into being much more active. What are a few different things that I can do to help stay active for a long time? Boom, shoe ad, right? You want to stay healthy. You want to have good feet. You want to, different things like that. It's not just keywords, but it's context. It's what is the second order effect happening of the essential query for what the customer is looking for. Yeah, that's a phenomenal question. I think everyone in here is tussled with the idea of, do I run ads on Facebook? Do I run ads on Google this month? Should I try and do a mail campaign? I think it's really about figuring out who the audience is and what conversations are they having. There's so much data available online right now. There's so many different studies. There's so many different communities, and there's so many different areas of discussion happening online. You can really paint a very clear picture of who the customer is, what they're looking for, and how is the conversation around what they're looking for happening. Because if the conversation around what they're looking for is happening deep in some Reddit thread, then you probably don't want to be running Facebook ads, right? Because that's just not the area upon which this customer would cross paths with that, right? So I think it's probably, in my opinion, the response to this is probably more data and research driven. Do I think GPT ads are regardless a good answer because it's low cost and has such a high user base? Yes. If I told you tomorrow you can go run the cheapest Facebook ads in this room, you'd probably hop on it, right? Just because the users are there, the people are looking, and the ads convert, right? So it's just a super early opportunity, and the costs are low, the users are high. I think that's a recipe for success.
Yeah, they actually are just used in the same way that like all pixels are used when they're in the ad banner itself, and pixels are normally used to just track attribution and understand like, oh, they're in this chat window right now, and then they'll click on your banner to follow the CTA or follow whatever that is. And then that's when the pixel actually starts tracking to make sure if they like end up at your site or wherever you're trying to drive that traffic.
I was gonna note that it's really practically no difference whatsoever from almost any other pixel you can use or run right now. Thank you guys.
But yeah, if we could get one more round of applause. And as always, we're having our open networking and kind of open hack session right now. So if you have any other questions about OpenAI ads or anything like that, go find Dakota. And then if you have any questions about turning your product ideas into actual usable products, make sure you talk with Jack. Last bit of housekeeping is just, as Reed said, our 2-year anniversary is coming up in about a month. So we will be doing some more like social gathering at some point, but we'll follow up with details there. And then we're going to have our normal programming Hack AI on July 20th. So we'll see you all in about a month then. But thank you guys so much for coming out. We'd be nothing without this community, and really appreciate everyone taking time out of their Monday night to be here.
Hello, hello. Hey guys, it is 8 o'clock. Time to start heading to the exit. Really appreciate you all coming out. Had an awesome time. We will be back again on the third Monday of next month. Thank you.
correctly.
No, you actually told me about this on Wednesday and stuff like that. Are you working with like the one team that's kind of doing some stuff?
Yep, I have to go over there tomorrow. Finished all the paperwork and stuff last week. 500 million pages of NDAs. Still trying to